Chosen one. Listen. Right now, all of heaven is leaning in. The angels have hushed their songs. The elders around the throne have paused their worship. And the King himself is watching with eyes of blazing fire. You stand at the very threshold of destiny, the place where your will and his will collide. This is the moment where everything changes, where the years of running, doubting, and delaying are finally confronted by one unshakable truth. You were never created to live outside his perfect plan. You feel it in your spirit, even before I speak it. This is not another passing word scrolling across your screen. This is a divine interruption. Heaven has stopped you right here because the Father has something to say. You have carried the weight of indecision long enough. Today, you choose me fully. You've been here before, haven't you? Standing at the edge, looking at the promise, but holding back because of fear. You've known the pull of the Spirit, but the chains of comfort and control have kept you from stepping forward. Yet even now, the atmosphere around you is trembling, because this time you will not turn back. The Word of God declares in the book of Psalms, chapter 23, verse 4, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff comfort me." Do you understand what this means? It means you are not stepping into his will alone. Every trembling step you take is under the watchful guard of heaven's armies. Every whisper of doubt is silenced by the authority of the one who called you. You are walking through the valley. Yes, but it is not to perish. It is to emerge, crowned in victory. And while earth sees only a person making a decision, heaven sees a warrior rising. Angels are stationed on either side of your path, clearing away the debris of past failures, closing the mouths of accusers, and marking your steps with light. They have been waiting for this moment because they know what comes next, the sound that will erupt when you finally say yes without hesitation. The enemy, on the other hand, is trembling for a different reason. He remembers the power of one person fully surrendered. He has read the history of men and women who shook kingdoms simply because they aligned their lives with the will of God. He knows that your obedience today will echo for generations, and he is desperate to distract you, to make you scroll past, to convince you that nothing special is happening here. But deep inside, you know better. This moment is the reason for every battle you've faced. The rejection, the loss, the confusion, the nights you cried until your body shook, all of it was a war for your yes. You are not standing here by accident. You are standing here because God himself preserved you for such a time as this. And when your will bends to his, heaven will not whisper, it will roar. I need you to picture it. The throne room shaking as the king rises from his seat. The sound of many waters thundering as he declares your obedience before the council of heaven. Angels lifting their swords high in victory. Trumpets blaring in celebration. Your name spoken with honor in places you have never seen. And here's the mystery. This celebration does not wait for you to see the fruit. Heaven rejoices the moment your heart turns. The instant you cross the line from hesitation into surrender, because from that point on, your steps are ordered, your path is straightened, and your destiny is sealed in his hands. Chosen one, this is not a small thing. Your decision today is more powerful than 1,000 sermons you could hear but never act on. It is the bridge between the prayers you have prayed and the promises you have yet to see. And as you take this step, I urge you to mark it in the earth, as it is being marked in heaven. Declare your yes. Let the unseen realm hear you. If this word is for you, don't keep it in the shadows. Share it so others can rise with you. Like this message as a prophetic act of agreement. Leave your testimony in the comments. Because there is power in public surrender, it tells the enemy he has no hold. And it tells heaven, you are unashamed of the one who called you. And as a sign that you are stepping into his will fully, comment the number 777, right now the number of divine completion. You did not arrive at your yes without a fight. Long before your lips whispered it, a war was waged in your heart. The battlefield was not a field of grass and mud, but the quiet spaces between your thoughts, the nights you lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The mornings when you rose with a heaviness you couldn't explain. Every pull toward surrender was met with a counterforce, urging you to cling to what was familiar. The war before the yes is always fierce, because it is fought over the most sacred ground you possess, your will. You can surrender money, opportunities, even relationships, without too much resistance. But when God asks for your will, He is asking for the very throne of your life. That is why the enemy fought you so hard, because once that throne belongs to the king, the enemy loses all leverage over you. Some battles you faced in this season were obvious, temptations you could name, distractions you could see coming, but others were subtle, dressed in the language of good sense, self-preservation, and waiting for the right time. The voice of hesitation often sounds reasonable, but its aim is delay. And delay is the thief of destinies. You remember the inner conversations, the thought, if I obey, I might lose what I have. The fear, what if I'm wrong? The doubt, maybe this is just my own idea. These were not harmless musings. They were fiery darts aimed at weakening your resolve. It was proclaimed in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of a sound mind. Fear was never your inheritance. The trembling you felt at the edge of obedience was not a warning to stop it, was the dying cry of fear as faith began to rise. And yet, it took more than a single burst of courage to win this war. There were moments when you stumbled, when you tried to negotiate a middle ground between obedience and comfort, but the Spirit would not let you settle. His voice was not always loud, but it was steady, threading through every noise. Trust me. Step forward. I am with you. Some days you felt as if you were wrestling with an invisible hand. You prayed, but the prayers seemed to circle back, unanswered. You tried to plan your way out, but the plans fell apart. Looking back, you can see what you could not. Then the Father was cornering you, not to harm you, but to free you. He was removing every false option so that your only choice would be the one your soul was made for, His will. The war before the yes is also a war with your own image of yourself. You had to lay down the version of you that was shaped by fear, rejection, and the need to be in control. You had to face the possibility that the you had been protecting all these years was not the real you at all, but a mask. Obedience requires the removal of masks, and the tearing away can feel like death. As was spoken in the sacred texts of old, the prophet Elijah stood before Israel and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow Him." Your war was the same, wavering between two opinions, yours and His. and every delay was costing you peace. But then something shifted. It was not an explosion of emotion, not a lightning strike from heaven. It was a quiet yielding, like the moment a clenched fist finally opens. You began to see that the cost of resisting was greater than the cost of surrendering. The fear that once felt like a wall began to shrink into something you could step over. The enemy did not stop attacking, but his weapons began to lose their sting. The doubts still whispered, but you recognized their tone. The temptations still appeared, but you saw through their disguise. The war was not over, but the tide had turned. This is the hidden victory that few will ever witness. The moment your heart leans toward God's will and refuses to lean back. It is invisible to the world, but it is seismic in the spirit realm. Demons feel the ground quake beneath them. Angels see the light in your spirit grow brighter. Heaven marks the shift with joy, because the yes has begun to take root. When you finally stepped forward, you did so not because the war had vanished, but because you had won the deciding battle. That battle was not about circumstances changing, it was about you changing. You became the kind of person who could no longer imagine living outside his will. This is why the war before the yes is so dangerous to the enemy and so precious to God. Once you have fought through it, your obedience is no longer fragile. It is tested, forged in fire, and ready to stand, no matter what storms may come. When you said yes, something in the unseen realm shifted instantly. You may not have felt it in your skin, but the kingdom of darkness felt it like an earthquake. For a long time, the enemy had built strategies around your hesitation. He wove webs of distraction, set snares in your path, and whispered lies about your worth, hoping you would never step fully into the will of God. But the moment you surrendered, those plans collapsed. This is why the atmosphere in the spirit world can change without anything in your physical life moving yet. Your yes was a declaration of war against every chain the enemy thought would hold you. It was not just a personal decision, it was a public proclamation in the courts of heaven that you belong entirely to the King. The enemy knows something many believers forget. Obedience carries power. It doesn't just protect you, it sends shockwaves into territories you may never step into physically. When you obey, you open doors for others to be set free. Your yes disarms generational strongholds. Your surrender weakens the enemy's grip, not only over your life, but over lives connected to yours. Scripture says in the Gospel of John, chapter 8, verse 36, "So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." That freedom was not just given to you in the abstract. It was activated the moment you aligned your will with His. Chains fell, gates opened, and what was once impossible began to move toward you. Imagine the enemy watching you from the shadows as you take your first steps in obedience. His claws are no longer wrapped around your ankles. His accusations, once sharp and believable, now bounce off the shield of truth you carry. He doesn't stop speaking, oh. He still hisses lies, but his voice has lost its authority. And though he lurks, he cannot touch the ground you now stand on, for it has been claimed by the blood of the Lamb. Every step you take sends ripples through the darkness, reminding him of battles already lost at Calvary. You walk not as a prisoner escaping, but as a warrior advancing, and every movement forward is a banner declaring that you belong entirely to the kingdom of light. That's why your yes terrifies him. Because the thing about obedience is that it doesn't end with one moment. It creates momentum. Each step you take forward in faith builds on the last, until you are walking in a rhythm that darkness cannot interrupt. This is the beginning of spiritual momentum, and once it's moving, the enemy's only tactic is to try to distract you or lure you back into compromise. But the old chains don't fit you anymore. You may still feel the echo of their weight, but that's just memory. You are not the person you were before you surrendered. Heaven has marked you, and the spiritual realm knows it. Do not underestimate the joy of heaven when darkness loses ground. Angels rejoice, not only because you chose God, but because they see the ripple effect your obedience will cause. There are people you haven't even met yet whose lives will be altered because you stepped into His will today. There are prayers you haven't prayed yet that will shake cities. There are words you will speak that will break chains you didn't even know existed. The enemy realizes all of this the moment you align with God's will. That's why he fought you so hard before your yes. But now, the battle is different. You are no longer fighting to get free. You are fighting from a place of freedom. That shift changes everything. And because of that shift, I'm asking you to do something right now, something small in the natural, but significant in the spirit. Comment, "I stand." Not because words on a screen have magical power, but because there is authority in declaring your position. I stand means I will not retreat. I will not go back to hesitation. I will not give the enemy the satisfaction of seeing me waver. When you type those two words, you are marking this moment. You are leaving a visible testimony that heaven can witness and that darkness cannot erase. It's not about who reads it, it's about aligning your confession with your decision. The power of life and death is in the tongue, and this is you choosing life. Let it be said in the spiritual realm today, you stood. You did not bow to fear. You did not collapse under pressure. You stood in the will of God. And because of that, the enemy lost his grip. There are moments in eternity when sound itself becomes a living force, when heaven's praise is not simply music, but a thunder that shakes the very foundations of creation. The moment you stepped into obedience was one of those moments. It was not a quiet nod from the throne. It was an eruption. The roar began at the heart of the throne room and rolled outward, touching every corner of the kingdom. The elders who bow before the Lamb rose to their feet. The four living creatures, whose voices echo day and night, added a new note to their cry. Thousands upon thousands of angels lifted their wings, releasing a sound that no human ear could fully contain. It was the sound of victory, not a battle being fought, but a battle already won. You may think this celebration belongs only to saints who finish their race, but that is not so. Heaven celebrates the beginning of obedience as fiercely as it celebrates the end. For the Father, your first step carries the same weight as the final one, because every journey toward His will begins with the moment you yield. That single moment carries the seed of all that will follow. The Apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, in the first letter, chapter 15, verse 57, "But thanks be to God, He gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." Lane, that victory is not postponed until your story is complete. It is present now, in the very heartbeat of your surrender. In the throne room, the King himself stood. His robe, woven in light, filled the chamber. His voice, when he spoke your name, carried through the ranks of heaven's host. They repeated it, not as mortals do, but with the kind of honor reserved for those who have aligned their lives with the King's desire. The sound was not contained in heaven alone. If you could have seen it, you would have noticed the ripple passing into the earth, touching regions you do not even know by name. In places where darkness had ruled unchallenged, cracks appeared. In homes where despair was thick, a new wind began to move. In hearts that had long been shut to God, the first stirrings of hope were felt. This is the mystery of obedience. It resonates. What happens in your heart is never confined to your own life. It is multiplied through the Spirit and carried far beyond your reach. That is why heaven shouts when you obey, because the victory is not private. It is generational, eternal, and unstoppable. The sound also carried downward, into the realm where the enemy and his servants dwell. It was not music to them, it was the sound of defeat. They recognized the tone, for it was the same one that rang out when the stone rolled away from the tomb. It was the sound that stripped them of their authority 2,000 years ago. Now, applied to your life in this present moment, they know they cannot silence that sound. It is the King's declaration over you, and it will follow you into every battle. You may face trials, but the sound of heaven's approval will be a shield you cannot see, but will always feel. It's important to understand, heaven's joy is not random. It is not merely sentimental emotion. It is strategic. When heaven erupts in praise, it releases strength into the one being celebrated. The roar of the kingdom is not just about God's glory, it's about your endurance. Heaven's sound reinforces your spirit, making you stand taller, see clearer, and walk steadier. And there is something else about this sound. It is recorded somewhere in the eternal archives. There is a record of this day, of the exact moment your spirit aligned with His will, and heaven responded. One day, when all is revealed, you will hear it again, and when you do, you will realize that every step of obedience after this moment carried an echo of that original roar. Right now, even as you read this, that echo is still moving. It travels through you, into your words, your prayers, your choices. It lingers in the spaces you leave behind, influencing those who cross your path. You may not hear the roar with your natural ears, but your spirit remembers it. That memory will carry you when the path grows hard, for this is the truth. Once heaven has celebrated your yes, nothing can erase it. Not failure, not fear, not the weight of the battles ahead. The roar has been released, and it is a part of your story forever. There is a mystery in the way heaven celebrates. It is deeply personal. When you obeyed, the joy was not some vague, general applause. It was a chorus that knew your name. Angels are not like men, easily impressed by appearances. They celebrate only when something aligns perfectly with the will of God. And that is what happened the moment your heart surrendered. Your name passed from the mouth of the King to the lips of the messengers. They spoke it the way one speaks, a treasured song with reverence, with affection, with awe. Every syllable was saturated in the story of your journey, the nights of wrestling, the valleys of doubt, the moments you almost gave up. And in speaking your name, they declared that your obedience has become part of heaven's living memory. The writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 103, verse 20, remind us, praise the Lord, you, His angels, you mighty ones who do His bidding, who obey His word. Imagine it, mighty ones, radiant in glory, speaking your name, because you have done the bidding of the King. This is not flattery. This is not exaggeration. Heaven honors obedience because it reflects the heart of Christ himself. When you obey, you mirror the Son's perfect submission to the Father. That is why your decision carries so much weight in the eternal realm, because it is patterned after the one who is the center of heaven's worship. And while this may feel far away from your everyday life, you must remember, heaven's perspective on your obedience changes how you live on earth. Once you know that your name has been spoken in those courts, you cannot walk the same way. Your steps carry honor now, not because of who you are in yourself, but because of whose will you are walking in. There is a sweetness in knowing you are celebrated, not for talent, not for status, not for wealth, but for surrender. Heaven's applause is never bought. It is always birthed in obedience. And once you have heard it in your spirit, you begin to crave more of it, not out of pride, but because you have tasted what it means to please the heart of God. I want to speak to you as one who has seen the difference this revelation makes. When a believer understands that their life is being witnessed and celebrated in heaven, they begin to live with a holy intentionality. They speak differently. They treat others differently. They guard their yes more fiercely, and that awareness begins to spill over, touching others around them. That's why I want to invite you not as a demand, but as a genuine request to help spread this word. If what you are reading has stirred something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it so that others may understand how heaven responds to obedience. Like this message so it remains visible to others who are searching for confirmation. And if you haven't already, subscribe so that we can keep walking this journey together, receiving and releasing words that awaken the spirit. When you do these things, it's not about boosting a post, it's about multiplying a message. Somewhere, there is someone on the edge of their yes, fighting the same war you fought. Your simple act of sharing could place this truth in their path at the exact moment they need it most. Think of it like the angels speaking your name. They pass it from one to another so that all heaven knows the testimony. You, too, can pass this word along until the earth begins to echo heaven's celebration. And when you do, remember that every person who steps into obedience because of your act of sharing becomes part of your fruit in eternity. The celebration that erupts over their yes will also carry your name in its chorus, because you played a part in their breakthrough. This is the way the kingdom works, seed and harvest, obedience and multiplication. One yes becomes many. One testimony becomes a wave of victories, and in the end, the Father receives the glory. The Son receives the reward of his suffering, and you receive the joy of knowing you lived for something that will never fade. So, as your name rests even now on the lips of heaven's messengers, let your life echo that honor. Walk as one who is seen, who is celebrated, who is deeply loved by the one who called you, and never forget every step in his will adds another verse to the song heaven sings over you. There are moments in your journey with God when he confirms, in a way you cannot deny, that you are on the right path. It is not always a dramatic sign in the sky. Often, it is a quiet but undeniable seal he places over your life, a prophetic marker in the spirit realm. That is what has happened now. Your obedience has drawn the attention of heaven, but it has also activated a specific spiritual seal in the unseen. This seal is like a divine signature, identifying you as one who walks under the covering of the King. It speaks louder than any word you could say, declaring to angels and demons alike, "This one belongs to me." The ancient words recorded in the book of Revelation, chapter 7, verse 3, still echo today. "Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God." The seal you now carry is not visible in the mirror, but it is unmistakable in the spirit. And this seal changes things. It shifts the atmosphere when you walk into a room. It causes certain doors to open because they are assigned to your destiny. It causes certain battles to come because the enemy recognizes the mark and fears what it represents. The seal is not a shield from all hardship, but it is a declaration that hardship will not define you. For some, the seal comes with a prophetic number, a symbolic reminder from the Father that your journey is both seen and ordered. This number becomes a private reminder of His promise and a public testimony to those who understand its meaning. Your number is 888. In the language of the Spirit, it speaks of new beginnings, resurrection power, and the overflow of God's promises. 7 represents completion. But 8 steps into the season beyond completion, the place where God does more than you asked, more than you imagined, more than you thought possible. 888 is the abundance of that overflow, the sealing of your walk with the fullness of His intention for your life. This number is not superstition, it is not chance. It is a prophetic sign of the covenant you have stepped into through obedience. When you see it, whether in scripture, references, moments in time, or even in daily life, let it remind you, I am sealed, I am marked, I am walking in a promise that cannot be broken. The enemy may try to convince you otherwise. He may whisper that your obedience was just a moment of emotion, that the seal is imagined, that the number is meaningless, but the Spirit within you knows the truth. You have been marked for this hour, and no one can unmark you. There is also responsibility in carrying the seal. It means you live with the awareness that you are not hidden. Your choices matter because they testify to the one who marked you. You walk differently because you know your steps are being watched not only by heaven, but also by those on earth who are searching for a living example of faithfulness. This is why I am asking you to take a small but prophetic action right now. Comment 888 below. Not because typing a number saves you, but because declaring it in agreement seals your spirit's recognition of what God has done. It is a way of saying, I acknowledge the seal. I receive the overflow. I walk in resurrection power. When you write it, you are joining heaven's witness over your life. You are planting a flag in the digital ground that says, this is who I am now, and perhaps someone scrolling in silence will see that number, be drawn to its meaning, and find the courage to step into their own obedience. Let this number be more than digits on a screen. Let it be a reminder you carry into every prayer, every battle, every season ahead. You are sealed, you are marked, and you are moving into a realm of abundance that nothing on earth or in hell can take away. And one day, when you stand before the King, the same number that marked your journey here will be written in heaven's record of your faithfulness. It will not be forgotten, because it is part of your eternal testimony. When you gave God your yes, the shift in the spiritual atmosphere was immediate. It was not gradual, not subtle. It was as if the air itself had been cleared of a long-standing heaviness. In the unseen realm, a great rearranging began. Forces of darkness that had stood in defiance for years were pushed back, while angelic hosts moved in to take their place. You may not have noticed it in a dramatic way. Perhaps the room you were in didn't shake. Perhaps there was no flash of light. But the absence of certain weights in your spirit, the sudden clarity in your thoughts, the deep peace settling into your chest, these were the first signs that the atmosphere had changed. Atmosphere is powerful. It shapes the way people think, act, and feel, often without their realizing it. Before you surrendered, the enemy worked hard to keep the spiritual climate around you heavy with confusion, fear, and distraction. This is not just bad vibes or negative energy. It is a calculated environment designed to suppress obedience. But when you said yes, that environment broke. Heaven does not merely influence the atmosphere, it replaces it. The kingdom's presence does not mix with darkness, it displaces it. The very air in the spirit around you is now charged with purpose, clarity, and divine alignment. The prophet Isaiah wrote in the scroll of Isaiah, chapter 60, verse 1, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." That glory is not a vague concept. It is an active force, a tangible presence that transforms the atmosphere wherever it is allowed to rest. And now it rests on you. That means the spaces you walk into are no longer neutral. When you enter a room, you carry the fragrance of heaven's order. Conversations shift. Thoughts become clearer. Hearts feel lighter. It is not because of your personality or charm, but because the Spirit of God has claimed the atmosphere through you. This presence is like a river quietly altering the land it touches, invisible in its motion, yet undeniable in its effect. You may not always see the changes immediately, but they begin the moment you arrive. For light does not need permission to push back the darkness. This shift also brings a new sensitivity. You will notice the weight of an environment more quickly. You will walk into some places and feel the resistance of darkness pressing back, not because you are weak, but because the light you carry is exposing what hides there. And in other places, you will sense the freedom of an atmosphere already touched by heaven, where your spirit finds instant rest. Do not be surprised if certain people begin to feel uncomfortable around you without knowing why. The change in atmosphere is not always welcomed by those who have grown accustomed to darkness. Your very presence now challenges the systems and agreements that once operated freely. The shift also has a personal effect. You will find your prayers flowing with greater clarity, your worship deepening without effort, your hunger for the word increasing. This is because the distractions that once clogged the spiritual air around you have been cleared, making way for unbroken fellowship with the Father. But you must guard this atmosphere. The enemy will seek to reintroduce the heaviness you were once under, using old triggers, familiar voices, or subtle compromises. He knows that if he can pollute the air around you, he can dull your awareness and slow your progress. This is why the atmosphere of your life is not a passive gift, it is an active stewardship. You guard it through continual surrender, through worship that is not dependent on feelings, through refusing to entertain the whispers that once kept you bound. You guard it by speaking truth out loud when lies creep in, by inviting the Spirit to search and cleanse your heart daily. And when you do, you will see that the atmosphere not only remains clear, it grows stronger. Places that once oppressed, you will no longer have the power to weigh you down. you will begin to shift environments more quickly, more decisively, until you are no longer just a carrier of God's presence, but a catalyst for His movement in every place you go. This is what your yes has made possible. The shift in atmosphere is not an accident. It is a deliberate work of the kingdom in response to your obedience. And from this day on, you will never walk into a space alone. The presence you carry will always go ahead of you, preparing the way for what God intends to do. The moment you stepped into obedience, heaven did not only celebrate, it also entrusted you with something weighty, a mantle. This mantle is not made of fabric or thread. It is woven from authority, anointing, and divine assignment. It is an invisible covering that rests on your shoulders, representing a commission from the King himself. In the scriptures, mantles were often a sign of calling and empowerment. When the prophet Elijah's time on earth was ending, he passed his mantle to Elisha, marking a transfer of prophetic authority. That moment was not just symbolic, it carried a spiritual reality. The same is true for you. Your yes created the space for God to place His mantle upon you, signifying that you are now entrusted with work in His kingdom that could not be given to you before. This mantle changes the way you walk. It does not make you more important in the eyes of the world, but it does set you apart in the eyes of heaven. It carries a weight, not the weight of burden, but the weight of glory, and with it comes both privilege and responsibility, according to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 28, verse 1. The righteous are as bold as a lion. This boldness is part of the mantle's nature. It gives you courage to stand where you once hesitated, to speak where you once stayed silent, and to act where you once waited for permission. The mantle also shifts how others in the spiritual realm respond to you. Angels recognize the authority it represents and move in alignment with it. Demons, too, recognize it, but not with welcome. They see the mantle as a sign of danger to their plans. That is why you may find that certain spiritual resistances increase after receiving it. It is not a sign you are off course, but that you have been promoted into greater impact. This promotion means the assignments before you are not random. They are chosen to match the authority you now carry. Every resistance is an indicator that the enemy has identified you as a threat, and every breakthrough is proof that heaven has already gone before you. The mantle does not just clothe you, it announces you. Wearing the mantle is not about feeling powerful, it is about being faithful. Authority in the kingdom is always rooted in servanthood. The mantle does not call you to lord over others, but to serve with greater strength, greater wisdom, and greater love. There will be moments when the mantle feels heavier than you expected. You may wonder why the assignments you face now seem larger, why the stakes feel higher. This is the nature of carrying divine authority. It positions you for tasks that require heaven's strength to complete. You cannot carry the mantle in your own power. You must continually lean on the one who placed it on you. The mantle is also a signal to those you are called to influence. Just as Elisha's peers recognized his new authority after Elijah's departure, there will be people who sense something different in you. They may not have the words for it, but they will recognize the presence and wisdom that flows from your life. Some will be drawn to it for guidance. Others may resist it because it disrupts their comfort. Both are natural responses to a mantle carried in truth. Guard this mantle carefully. It is not something to display for recognition, nor to hide out of fear. It is to be worn in humility, stewarded with prayer, and exercised in alignment with God's heart. Do not try to use it for purposes he has not assigned. The mantle is effective only when it rests within the boundaries of his will. Over time, you will see that the mantle shapes you as much as you shape the world through it. It will teach you deeper dependence on God, greater sensitivity to His Spirit, and a readiness to respond when He calls. You will come to realize that the mantle is not just something you wear, it becomes part of who you are in the kingdom. One day, you may be called to place your mantle upon someone else, passing on what you have carried to another chosen vessel. Until then, walk with the awareness that you have been entrusted with something heaven considers precious. The mantle is both a gift and a trust, and the way you carry it will echo into eternity. When the King calls your name and entrusts you with His will, there comes a moment so personal, so unmistakable, that it burns itself into the very center of your memory. This is the moment you hear Him say, "Well done." It is not a vague impression or a passing thought. It is a voice that speaks to the deepest part of you, affirming not just what you have done, but who you have become in the process of obeying. For years, you longed for confirmation. You searched for signs that you were on the right path, for some reassurance that your sacrifices were not in vain. And then, in an instant, the voice of the King answered every unspoken question. It wasn't just the words, it was the weight they carried, the weight of eternal truth spoken directly over your life. Hearing His affirmation does something no earthly recognition could ever do. It settles you. It silences every accusation, both from the enemy and from within your own mind. It replaces striving with peace, insecurity with identity. It is more than approval. It is adoption into a deeper place of intimacy with Him. The ancient words recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verse 23, tell us, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." When the King speaks those words to you in your spirit, it is not flattery, it is an invitation. It calls you into a new season of trust and responsibility. It tells you that what you carried faithfully in private is now ready to be multiplied in public. And with that invitation comes a holy stirring, a realization that the path ahead may be greater in challenge but richer in purpose. You begin to see opportunities you once overlooked, because now you walk with the confidence of one sent. His affirmation becomes both your shield against doubt and your compass toward the assignments that will shape eternity through your obedience. In that moment, you also realize something humbling. The few things you thought were insignificant were precious to Him. The quiet prayers when no one saw, the sacrifices you made without applause, the yes you gave when it cost you comfort, all of it was noticed. Every act of obedience, however small in your eyes, was part of a greater story being written in heaven. This affirmation also carries authority. When the King says, "Well done," it is not merely looking back at what has been, it is speaking forward into what will be. It empowers you to step into assignments you once thought impossible. It marks you as one who can be trusted with greater measures of His kingdom. But with this honor comes the need for steadiness. The moment you hear His affirmation, the enemy will try to twist it. He will either attempt to make you doubt what you heard or tempt you into pride because of it. That is why you must hold His words with humility, remembering that the strength to obey came from Him in the first place. When you carry His "well done" in your heart, you begin to live differently. You stop working for the applause of others because you already have the approval of the one who matters most. You stop measuring your success by visible results and start measuring it by faithfulness. You begin to understand that what pleases him is not perfection, but obedience. Even in the hardest seasons ahead, this memory will be your anchor. When challenges arise, you will remember the sound of his voice. When doubts try to creep in, you will recall the joy that filled you when he spoke. And when you feel unseen by the world, you will rest in the fact that you are fully seen and fully loved by your King. So, I want you to take a step right now, not for me, not for others, but as an act of remembrance and agreement in your own heart. Comment, "Well done," below. Let it be a personal marker between you and the Lord. A way of saying, "I receive your affirmation, and I will walk in it." Every time you see those words, whether written by your own hand or by someone else's, let them remind you that heaven has already spoken over your life. You are not chasing approval, you are living from it. And that changes everything. Your yes was never just about you. It was a key and a lock you didn't even know existed, and when it turned, it opened the way for others. The ripple effect of obedience is one of the most underestimated forces in the kingdom. What you did in secret has already begun to influence people you may never meet on this side of eternity. Sometimes it's a person close to you, quietly watching your life. They've seen your struggles, your resilience, and the change in your spirit since you surrendered. They may not have said anything yet, but your decision is preaching a silent sermon they cannot ignore. Other times, it's someone far away, whose path you'll never cross physically, but whose spirit was stirred because of the shift in the spiritual atmosphere you helped release. The Apostle Paul writes in his letter to the Romans, chapter 10, verse 17, "Faith comes from hearing the message, and the message is heard through the word about Christ." Your obedience has become part of that message, living evidence that the word is not just ink on a page, but power at work in a life surrendered to God. And here's the beauty. The ripple never moves in just one direction. When one person steps into obedience because of your example, they become another wave in the same current, touching still more lives. This is multiplication at its purest, not through strategy alone, but through the Spirit breathing on your faithfulness. Think of it like a stone thrown into a still pond. The first ring is small, but it pushes outward, creating more and more circles until the whole surface is moving. That's what's happening right now because of your yes. You may not see all the circles yet, but they are moving, touching shores you didn't even know were there. And unlike ripples in an ordinary pond, these waves do not fade with distance, they gather strength. Each one carries the sound of your obedience, amplified by the Spirit, so that even distant shores feel its touch. Somewhere, a heart is being stirred to believe again. Somewhere else, chains are loosening because courage has been awakened. You may never set foot in those places, but your yes travels there, riding the current of God's purpose, accomplishing what you could never do in your own strength. Sometimes, the ripple effect is instant, a conversation, a testimony, or a prayer that sparks someone else's step of faith. Other times, it takes years before the seed planted in their heart begins to grow. But whether fast or slow, the outcome is certain. Obedience produces fruit, and fruit produces more seed. This is why it matters so much that we do not keep these moments to ourselves. Testimonies are meant to be told. Light is meant to be set on a stand. And the works of God are meant to be declared. When you share what God has done in your life, you're not just telling a story, you're extending the ripple. That's why I want to pause here and ask you something, not as a ritual, but as a genuine invitation to partner in the work God is doing through your obedience. If this word has confirmed something deep in you, like it, so it will remain in sight for others who need to hear it. Share it, so the ripple continues beyond this moment, reaching someone who might be on the very edge of their yes. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so we can keep walking this journey together, releasing words that awaken and strengthen faith. You might think, what difference could my small action make? But remember, every wave begins with a small disturbance in the water. What you see as a single click or a simple share could be the moment the current reaches someone's life and shifts their entire direction. The kingdom often moves in ways that seem small to the human eye. A shepherd boy's stone, a widow's oil, a fisherman's net. Your obedience and the choice to let others see it may be the catalyst for breakthroughs you won't hear about until eternity. So, keep solving, keep speaking, keep letting the light of your yes shine where it can be seen. You have no idea who is watching from the shadows, wondering if they, too, can step into God's will. Let them see that it's possible. Let them see the joy and strength it brings. Let them see that the God who moved for you can move for them. The ripple is already moving. Heaven has set it in motion. Your part now is to keep throwing stones of obedience into the waters, trusting that the Spirit will carry them further than you could ever imagine. The moment you step deeper into God's will, you discover an uncomfortable truth. Obedience draws opposition. Not the same battles you once faced. Those were designed to keep you from saying yes. These are new enemies, stirred up precisely because you have entered new territory. Before, you were a target of opportunity. Now, you are a target of strategy. The enemy studies those who carry authority in the kingdom. He looks for their patterns, their weaknesses, and their open doors. This is not to frighten you, but to awaken you. New ground means new warfare, and greater authority attracts greater resistance. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah. In the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, verse 19, "They will fight against you but will not overcome you. For I am with you and will rescue you, declares the Lord." This is not a promise of a battle-free life. It is the assurance of victory in every battle that obedience brings. These new enemies can appear in different forms. Sometimes they come as external pressure, unexpected criticism, sudden relational tension, or systems that seem designed to block your progress. Other times they arrive in the form of internal struggles, fatigue, discouragement, or a sudden wave of doubt you thought you had already conquered. And sometimes these enemies manifest in ways so subtle you almost miss them: a slight shift in atmosphere during a conversation, an unexplainable heaviness when you begin a new assignment, or a lingering thought that questions your worth. They are like shadows stretching across the path, hoping you'll mistake them for the road itself. But discernment sharpens in obedience. You begin to notice what is not from God, to identify the source of opposition, and to address it with the authority that your yes has unlocked in the spirit realm. There are also spiritual confrontations that are hard to explain to others. You may sense an increase in resistance during prayer, moments when clarity feels clouded, or even subtle temptations aimed at pulling you just slightly off course. These are not signs that you've stepped out of God's will. They are indicators that your obedience has made you dangerous to the enemy's agenda. It is important to recognize that new enemies often come disguised. They may even try to wear the face of something familiar, an old habit, a past fear, a former relationship, not because the past is reclaiming you, but because the enemy knows your history and hopes you will be vulnerable where you once were. But here is the other side of the truth. New enemies also reveal new strength. You could not have faced these battles before you would not have had the mantle, the seal, or the spiritual authority to withstand them. God allows you to meet these enemies now because He has already equipped you to defeat them. Think of David. Before Goliath, he fought lions and bears in the hidden places. Those battles prepared him. But the giant was a new kind of enemy, one that came into his life only after he stepped into his calling. Yet, the same God who gave him victory in the fields gave him victory in the valley. The same pattern is true for you. What feels like an escalation is actually an affirmation. Heaven has assessed your capacity and determined that you are ready for this level of warfare. That alone is evidence of growth. Your task now is to stay alert and anchored. Alert, so you can recognize the strategies being used against you. Anchored, so you are not swept away by sudden storms. The enemy's hope is not always to defeat you outright. Sometimes it is simply to distract you until the fire of your obedience dims. But if you remain fixed in the presence of God, His plans lose their power. And do not forget, you are not fighting alone. The same heavenly hosts that celebrated your obedience now stand guard over your journey. The mantle you carry is a visible mark in the spirit realm that commands angelic assistance. The seal upon you declares to every power of darkness that you belong to the King and operate under His authority. This means that even in the thick of battle, victory is not uncertain. It is guaranteed. The only question is whether you will keep advancing or allow the opposition to slow you down. Your yes was not meant to be a single step. It was meant to be the beginning of a march that continues until every piece of territory assigned to you is secured. So when new enemies rise, see them for what they are: confirmation that you have entered a higher plane of influence and responsibility. Let their resistance remind you that your presence in this territory matters, and let each victory you win become another testimony that obedience is always worth the fight. Every time God advances you, He often leaves a sign, something to remind you of where you've been and where you're going. For Israel, it was stones taken from the Jordan, set up as a memorial so generations could ask, "What do these stones mean?" For you, in this season, it is a prophetic number that carries weight in the Spirit. This number is more than coincidence. It is not random. It is the language of the Father to your spirit, a symbolic key to unlock courage and focus for the days ahead. The number set over this stage of your journey is 555. 5 has always carried the meaning of grace in the kingdom. It is a reminder that what you are doing is not sustained by your strength alone. 555 is a declaration that grace is not only covering you, but multiplying over you. Grace for the calling, grace for the battles, grace for the relationships, grace for the growth. This is divine enablement on every side. You need this reminder because grace is not just for forgiveness, it is for power. Grace picks you up when you fall, but it also carries you when the road ahead feels too steep. Triple grace is heaven's way of saying, You will not run dry here. The apostle wrote in his second letter to the Corinthians, chapter 12, verse 9, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." This number is God's personal echo of that truth in your life. In the days ahead, you may see this number in unexpected places on a clock, in a document, in a total, in a verse reference, and each time it will be a whisper from heaven, "I have graced you for this." It will come in moments when you feel pressure rising or when doubt begins to knock. And when it comes, remember that grace is not a passive comfort, it is an active force that propels you forward. It will not always arrive in the dramatic way you might expect. Sometimes it will slip quietly into your day, almost unnoticed, until your spirit catches it. In that moment, pause. Let the sight of it steady your breathing and remind you that you are not carrying this alone. Heaven is tracking every step you take, and this number is its gentle nod of assurance. Even when the path feels uncertain, the repetition of this sign will whisper that the author of your story is still writing, and he has already scripted your victory. Your journey right now is about walking in that multiplied grace. That means you are not called to simply survive this season, but to build in it, to plant in it, to take ground in it. Grace is your foundation, but it is also your weapon. Where others burn out, you will endure. Where others are silenced, you will speak. Where others retreat, you will advance. This is why I want you to take a prophetic action right now. Comment 555 below. This is not superstition, it is agreement. It is you saying, "I receive this multiplied grace. I will walk in it, and I will not waste it." When you type those 3 digits, you are marking this word as yours. You are also declaring in the open what heaven has already decreed in the unseen. And just like the memorial stones by the Jordan, it will stand as a visible sign that you have crossed into something new. There is power in remembering what God has spoken. Too many people receive a word, rejoice for a moment, and then forget it in the noise of life. But the ones who hold on to the signs he gives, the numbers, the verses, the confirmations, they are the ones who stay anchored when the winds change. Let 555 be that anchor for you. When challenges rise, say it aloud. When victories come, give him glory for it. When uncertainty creeps in, let the number remind you, grace brought you here. Grace will keep you here. And grace will take you further than you imagined. And when you stand on the other side of this season, you will look back and see the thread of grace woven through every moment. You will realize that you never walked alone, never fought alone, never built alone. The hand of God was steady on your life the entire time. So let this number be more than a sign, let it be your song. Walk into the days ahead with the confidence that triple grace is resting on you, and nothing formed against you can stand in its presence. There are rewards in the kingdom that are stored away until a precise moment. They are not delayed because God is reluctant to give them, but because he is waiting for you to be ready to carry them without losing sight of him. The crown you now step into is one of those rewards. This crown is not like the trophies or honors the world offers. It is not made of gold that can tarnish or jewels that can be stolen. It is a spiritual reality, a mark of victory and authority that heaven recognizes instantly. It was crafted long before you ever knew you would wear it, fashioned through the wisdom of God, shaped for your specific calling. and kept in reserve until your obedience unlocked it. The ancient words, recorded in the second letter to Timothy, chapter 4, verse 8, tell us, "Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing." Though Paul spoke of the ultimate day of reward, there is also a measure of this crown you can walk in now, a foretaste of what is to come. In the Spirit, this crown is more than decoration. It is declaration. It announces that you have passed a test, completed a season, and stepped into a higher realm of trust with the King. It signals to the spiritual world that you are not merely surviving, you are reigning in the authority he has given you. Crowns in Scripture often symbolize rulership, victory, or honor. When you wear this crown, you are stepping into the reality that your life is now a visible sign of God's kingdom in action. Your words carry greater weight, your prayers greater reach, your presence greater influence. This is not because of you, but because of the one whose name you bear. The crown also comes with a new clarity of identity, where once you may have doubted your place in his plan, now you stand with assurance. You know whose you are, and you know why you are here. The lies that once told you that you were unworthy have been silenced, not because you have earned worth, but because his grace has clothed you in it. Wearing the crown, however, is not an invitation to comfort. It is an invitation to greater responsibility. Crowns in the kingdom are not for display but for service. The higher the authority, the deeper the humility required to wield it well. This crown calls you to lead with wisdom, to speak with truth, and to walk in a way that reflects the heart of the King at all times. There will be moments when you feel the weight of it, not because it burdens you in the natural sense, but because you understand the significance of carrying something so sacred. It is a constant reminder that your life is not your own. Every step you take reflects the one who crowned you. The spiritual realm responds differently to you now. There will be places where resistance increases simply because of the authority your crown represents. The enemy recognizes it as a threat to his influence, while the angels recognize it as a mark of heaven's endorsement over your life. You may also notice that certain opportunities open without your effort. This is not coincidence. It is the favor that flows from alignment with his will. The crown signals to the right doors that it is time to open, and to the wrong ones that they must remain shut. Still, the crown is not something you grasp with pride. The moment you begin to think of it as a personal achievement rather than a divine gift, you risk losing the purity of what it represents. Keep your eyes on the King who placed it on your head, and let your gratitude guard your heart. This crown is also a prophecy of the day when you will lay it down at his feet. In Revelation, the elders cast their crowns before the throne, not because they devalued them, but because they recognized that every victory and honor belonged to him. Your crown now is both a reward and a rehearsal, a taste of the joy you will feel when you finally see him face to face. Until that day, walk with the dignity and responsibility of one who has been trusted with such a treasure. Let the crown remind you not only of where you have come from, but of where you are going. And remember, the glory of this gift is not in the crown itself, but in the King who deemed you ready to wear it. There are books in heaven, not dusty scrolls stored away for some far-off future, but living records that bear witness to every act of obedience, every prayer spoken in faith, every tear shed in surrender. When you stepped into his will, The pages of your story began to turn in a way they never had before. These are not the same as the book of life where your salvation is recorded. These are the scrolls of testimony, the chronicles of your partnership with God in His purposes. They are written by hands that cannot make errors, in ink that cannot fade. Every line is precise, capturing not just what you did, but the heart with which you did it. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 56, verse 8, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." This is more than poetic language. It is the reality of a father who treasures the details of his children's journey. When heaven writes your story, it does not skip the difficult chapters. The seasons of struggle are recorded alongside the victories, not as marks of failure, but as evidence of endurance. In the kingdom's record-keeping, the valley is as significant as the mountaintop, because both are part of the testimony that will inspire others for generations to come. Every trial written in those pages becomes a jewel in the setting of your testimony. The valley moments do not diminish the value of your story. They give it depth, contrast, and weight. Without them, the victories would seem shallow, almost accidental. But when the record shows that you trusted in the darkness, that you kept walking when you could not see the way, it magnifies the glory of the one who sustained you. In this way, the hardest chapters become some of the most beautiful, for they reveal both your perseverance and His unwavering presence. Every time you chose to forgive instead of retaliate, it was written. Every time you gave when no one saw, it was written. Every time you worshipped through pain, it was written. Even the decisions you thought were small, a word of encouragement, a hidden act of kindness, these are carefully noted. Because in the light of eternity, nothing done in love is ever wasted. These scrolls are not kept in silence. At appointed times, they are opened in the courts of heaven as evidence that grace was not received in vain, evidence that you trusted Him even when the outcome was uncertain, evidence that your faith was alive and active. Angels hear your story read aloud, and they recognize the glory of God reflected in a human life fully surrendered. There is also a mystery here. The record of your life is not just for heaven's sake. It will be used in ways you cannot yet imagine. Some of your story will be released into the earth as a prophetic witness, inspiring others to take their own steps of obedience. Other parts may remain hidden until eternity, when they will be revealed in the presence of all, displaying the intricate ways God used your life to advance His kingdom. Knowing this changes how you live. You begin to see each day not as isolated moments, but as sentences in an ongoing narrative. Choices matter because they are part of a larger plotline. Words matter because they shape the chapters yet to be written. Even silence matters when it is chosen in obedience to the Spirit's leading. The weight of this truth is not meant to burden you, but to honor you. God thinks your life is worth recording. He has assigned scribes of heaven to follow your journey, not because He needs the information, but because He values the testimony you are building with Him. One day, you will hear your own story read back to you. You will see details you forgot, moments you didn't think were significant, now shining with eternal meaning. You will realize that nothing in your obedience was wasted, and that the author of your life never lost track of a single page. Until that day, walk with the awareness that heaven's quills are never still. Let that awareness steady you in trial, and keep you humble in victory. For the scrolls that bear your story are not only a record, they are a song of faithfulness, a witness for eternity, and a testament that your yes was worth every cost. The moment you stepped into God's will, you didn't just enter a season of celebration, you also stepped into a call to stand unshaken. The joy of obedience is real, but so is the pressure to let go of it when the path becomes difficult. Heaven celebrates your yes, but the battlefield still demands your courage. Standing unshaken means you refuse to bend under the weight of opposition. It means that when voices rise against you, you stay anchored in what God has spoken. It means that storms may circle, but they cannot uproot you. And it means your yes is not temporary, it is permanent. The Apostle Paul reminds us in his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 15, verse 58, "Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain." There will be days when standing feels harder than stepping. Saying yes in a moment of spiritual clarity is one thing, living it out in seasons of pressure is another. But you are not called to endure in your own strength. The same Spirit that gave you the courage to obey will give you the strength to stand. And sometimes that strength won't come as a sudden rush of power, but as a quiet persistence that refuses to let go. You might wake up still feeling the weight of the battle, yet find yourself taking one more faithful step. That, too, is the Spirit's work. He doesn't always remove the storm. Often, He teaches you how to remain steady within it. Each day you choose to stand becomes a victory written into eternity's record, proof that your obedience is more than emotion. It's endurance, and endurance, refined in trial, produces a faith that nothing can shake. Standing unshaken also means living with focus. Distractions will come, some obvious, others disguised as opportunities. The enemy doesn't always attack with force. Sometimes he simply tries to lure you into moving off course by just a few degrees. But over time, those few degrees can take you far from the path God intended. That is why your yes must be guarded with vigilance. Your life right now is a testimony in motion. Others are watching, not just to see if you will start well, but to see if you will finish well. Your consistency is a message to them that obedience is not a phase, it's a lifestyle. This is also why your story needs to be visible, not for your glory, but for God's. When you share how He has kept you standing, you are giving others the courage to do the same. That's why I'm asking you, if this word has spoken to you, to like this message so it remains visible to others who may be searching for strength. Share it with someone who is on the edge of giving up. Your act of sharing might be the rope they need to pull themselves back up. And if you haven't yet, subscribe so that we can keep walking together in this journey. Every time you return here, you are strengthening the walls of your own resolve. You are feeding the part of you that wants to stand. Even when everything else says, sit down, I also want to invite you to take one more step today. Leave a comment. It doesn't have to be long or elaborate, just a simple declaration that you are choosing to remain unshaken. Your words may be the spark that keeps another believer's flame alive. When we speak life out loud, we not only reinforce it in ourselves, we release it into the atmosphere for others to catch. Standing unshaken will test you, but it will also transform you. You will find that your roots grow deeper, your vision becomes clearer, and your heart becomes steadier. The very winds that were sent to knock you down will end up strengthening you. So, hold your ground. Chosen one, stand with your head high and your spirit anchored. Let your posture tell the world that the God who called you is the God who keeps you. And let every step you take declare, I am unshaken, and I will not move from His will. Like, share, comment, subscribe, not for numbers, but for impact. Every click, every share, every word of agreement becomes another stone in the wall of this testimony. Together, we will stand, and when we do, nothing can break the foundation we have in Him. The celebration over your life did not end the moment you said yes. In the courts of heaven, the sound continues, a song that is not bound by time. A melody woven into the eternal rhythm of worship before the throne. These songs are not generic hymns, they are deeply personal, carrying the story of your obedience within their harmonies. When heaven sings, it is not simply for beauty's sake. Worship in that realm is also proclamation. The songs declare what the King has done, magnify His nature, and announce the victories of His people. Your yes became one of those victories, and so it became part of heaven's song. The book of Zephaniah, chapter 3, verse 17, reveals this mystery. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you, in His love. He will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. These songs are unlike anything you've heard on earth. They carry the weight of eternity, the joy of perfect victory, and the intimacy of a father's delight in his child. Every note is a brushstroke of light, painting your story onto the canvas of eternity. Angels join in, not because they must, but because your obedience gives them another reason to worship the one they serve. These songs move with a power that cannot be contained, cascading like waves of living light across the expanse of heaven. Every harmony is infused with the fragrance of holiness, carrying the memory of the moment your heart yielded fully to Him. The angels do not merely sing, they release declarations that pierce through every layer of creation, ensuring that your obedience is known in realms you have never seen. In this music, time loses its meaning. The past, present, and future merge into one chorus that proclaims both the King's glory and the unshakable place you hold in His heart. There are layers to these songs. Some are sung in the throne room, where the atmosphere is saturated with the presence of the King. Others are sung as declarations in the heavenly realms, announcing to all creation that you belong to Him. And some are carried quietly to your spirit moments when you feel an unexplainable peace or joy, not realizing it is the echo of heaven's music reaching you. In seasons of trial, these songs do not stop. The tempo may change from triumphant victory marches to steady, sustaining melodies, but the singing continues. Heaven does not pause its worship when you face resistance. It intensifies, reminding the enemy that your story is still unfolding under the sovereignty of God. There is a purpose to this unending song. It is not only a response to what you have done, it is also fuel for what you will do. Worship from heaven strengthens the heart of the one being celebrated. It becomes a spiritual wind in your sails, propelling you forward when the waters grow still. And here is something even more astonishing. Your yes has added a verse to heaven's eternal repertoire. That means the song of your obedience will never fade. Long after you have stepped into eternity, it will still be sung, a testimony to generations of angels and saints that one human life, fully yielded, can glorify God in ways that reach beyond time itself. Sometimes, you may sense this reality without having words for it. You'll find yourself suddenly encouraged for no reason, or moved to tears during a quiet moment, or stirred to worship without a clear cause. Those are glimpses of the song breaking through the Father's voice, wrapped in melody, reminding you of His delight in you. The unending nature of this song also means that your obedience has become part of heaven's memory. It is not a passing event, it is a permanent fixture in the eternal celebration. And while your life will have many seasons, some bright and some difficult, the song will not change its theme. It will always declare the goodness of God and the power of a surrendered heart. In the end, when you finally stand before the throne, you will hear the song in full. You will recognize phrases and moments woven into it. The night you chose faith over fear, the day you took the first step, the battle you fought in silence and won through prayer. Every note will carry the weight of those moments, and you will understand fully for the first time how deeply your yes moved the heart of God. Until then, remember this: the song has already begun, and it will never end. Your obedience has given heaven another reason to rejoice, and that joy will echo through eternity like a river of music, unbroken, unstoppable, and forever tied to your name. One yes can outlive you. That is the mystery of obedience. It sows seeds in eternity that will continue to bear fruit long after your earthly life is finished. The moment you aligned your will with His, your story became part of heaven's unending testimony. Eternity measures time differently. What happens in a single heartbeat here can echo endlessly there. When heaven celebrates your obedience, it is not only for what it means today, but for what it will mean in 1,000 years, and then 1,000 more. Your yes is not a single event, it is an eternal marker, a point of reference for God's faithfulness and your partnership with Him. The voice of God thundered in the book of Exodus, chapter 33, verse 17. I will do the very thing you have asked, because I am pleased with you, and I know you by name. These words reveal the heart of the Father, that He is not distant in your obedience, but personally invested, intimately aware, and eternally engaged with what your surrender accomplishes. In the heavenly archives, your yes is recorded alongside those of countless others who walked in His will. Abraham's willingness to leave his homeland, Esther's courage to stand before the king, Peter's bold step out of the boat. Each act of obedience, though different in form, shares the same essence: trust in the one who called. Now, your story has been woven into that same tapestry, and this tapestry is not static, it is alive, moving with the breath of God, stretching across the ages to tell one unbroken story of His faithfulness through His people. Each thread carries its own color and texture, but together they form a masterpiece that could not exist without every single act of trust. Your yes is now interwoven with the courage of prophets, the endurance of martyrs, and the devotion of saints. In eternity's view, you are not an isolated chapter, but part of a divine epic that will be admired, studied, and celebrated forever. This eternal impact is not just about what you do in great moments, it is about the ripple effect your life creates. Every person who is encouraged by your faithfulness, every soul who finds courage because you refuse to quit, becomes part of the harvest of your obedience. In this way, Your yes multiplies itself across generations. In eternity, you will see the full extent of this multiplication. You will meet people whose lives were changed by prayers you forgot you prayed, by words you thought were insignificant, by choices you made quietly when no one was watching. And you will realize that heaven never lost track of a single seed you sowed. There is also a sobering truth in this. The eternal impact of one yes also means there is eternal loss when a yes is withheld. Opportunities can pass. Assignments can be delayed. And the stories heaven longs to write through us can remain unfinished. But in your case, heaven's pen did not pause. Your surrender allowed the story to keep moving. The unending testimony of your obedience will not be a cold record, it will be a living witness. In the ages to come, God will point to your life as a display of His grace, His power, and His ability to work through those who trust Him completely. The crown you wear, the victories you have won, the battles you have endured, all of it will be part of this display. And because eternity has no end, this testimony has no end. Long after the final pages of history are written, your yes will still be speaking, still bearing fruit, still magnifying the one who gave you the strength to say it. This is why the angels erupted in joy when you obeyed. They understood that your decision had set something in motion that would never stop. Even now, the song over your life continues. The scroll of your story grows longer, and the ripple of your obedience expands into realms unseen. Heaven does not forget. The King does not forget. And when all is said and done, your yes will stand as proof that a surrendered heart can change the course of eternity. So walk on with this truth in your spirit. You have stepped into something that will never fade. The eternal impact of your obedience is secure, not because of your strength, but because the one who called you is faithful to complete what He began. And in the endless ages to come, your yes will still be echoing a sound that started here, but will never, ever end. Chosen one, you have walked with me through every moment of this journey, from the trembling yes that shook the heavens to the eternal testimony your obedience has become. We have seen how the King celebrates, how the angels rejoice, how the seal, the mantle, the crown, and the song all mark your life. And now, here you stand, knowing beyond doubt that you are part of something that will never fade. But let this not be the end. Your story is still unfolding. There are more pages to write, more ripples to release, more victories to win. Every truth you've heard here is meant to be lived, not just remembered. The same God who met you at the beginning of this message is with you right now, ready to take you further. That is why I am asking you, from my heart, to help carry this word beyond this moment. Like this message, so it will remain visible to those who need its reminder. Share it with someone standing on the edge of their own, yes, so they too can see that heaven waits to celebrate them. Leave a comment, even just a single line, declaring what part of this journey has spoken most to your spirit. And subscribe, so we can continue to walk together, growing stronger in faith and sharper in purpose. Your engagement is not about numbers, it's about impact. Every action you take here extends the reach of this word, ensuring it finds those who are silently crying out for confirmation that they, too, are chosen. Together, we can see more lives step into obedience, more victories echo through eternity, and more crowns placed on the heads of those who dared to say yes. Stand firm. Shine bright. Keep going. Heaven is still singing.